Hello and welcome to the first of our edition called Tachlis. Let's just go through that definition very quickly. It conveys the idea of getting to the point, speaking plainly, and focusing on practicality. And that's exactly what we want to do on this podcast. I'm Michael McKenna. I stem from the broadcasting industry. So having said that, that is what we want to look into, getting down to the truth of matters, unpacking issues, and not saber rattling and he says, she says. This is not the platform for that. We want to unpack issues from a professional level, having spoken to those who have put this show together. What we want to aim for is the day after, because that's inevitable, isn't it? We're going forward. We are living in these times, yes, of conflict, but there will come the day when the dust will settle. And then what? We should get to know each other, isn't it? But would we have gotten to know each other by then? This is what we want to unpack on Tachlis. Joining me on the line, my colleague in broadcasting, Rolene Marks, a journalist from Israel. Rolene, over to you.
Shalom, shalom. We're going to do what we do best here in the Middle East. We're going to talk Tachlis, or in Arabic, as we say, dugri. We're going to get to the heart of the matter. And you mentioned something important. You mentioned the day after. And there are all kinds of conversations around us about what happens with that day after. And I think with you sitting in South Africa, me sitting here in Israel, it's no great secret the hostility shown by the South African government towards Israel. But is that reflective of the people? So we are going to talk Tachlis, as we do best in the Middle East. We're going to get to the heart of the matter. We're going to bring in voices from South Africa, from Israel and the region. And we're going to build bridges between Christians, Muslims, Jews, have those important conversations. And I think our guest today is a perfect embodiment of what it means to be a bridge builder.
Okay, so do I have the honor of introducing? Well, I guess I do. Ilse Strauss from Bridges for Peace. Ilse, thanks for joining us on this inaugural edition of Tachlis.
Hello there. Hello from Jerusalem, which I am not objective about it, but I feel it's the most beautiful city in the whole wide world.
Okay, I wish I could visit someday. Time will tell, but
I'm not
once
going
again,
to argue.
Thanks so much for joining us, Ilse. Okay, so we've laid the foundation for the conversation on Tachlis, getting to the point, building bridges. I think this is so applicable and appropriate that we got you on board for the first program. So let's begin. Tell us all about Bridges for Peace. Let's just get a general idea as to what this is all about.
Well, if we are going to speak down to the bone, Bridges for Peace exists to build relationships between Christians and Jews in Israel and around the world. And that is what we do. Our headquarters are in Jerusalem, here where I am at the moment. And we provide food to 24,000 needy Israelis every month. We help Jews from around the world, from the diaspora, come back home, usually from war-torn areas, Jewish people who can't afford it. We help children from needy families. We help them get an education, get a hot lunch every day. We are also an education organization. So we speak to Christians from around the world, and that is my job. I have the very distinct privilege of telling Israel's story, not as, oh, look at this amazing nation who can do absolutely no wrong, because they're human. But to tell the story from a perspective of, look at this amazing nation that God is using as a billboard to the rest of the nations that he exists, that he is faithful, that he does what he says he will do. It doesn't matter how long that takes. We also have national offices in seven nations around the world, one of them being South Africa. So that in a very short few sentences is what Bridges for Peace is all about. We've been in Israel for 50 years. Our founder was actually here during the 6-Day War, and he used his school van to transport wounded soldiers from the front lines to the hospital, and that is how Bridges for Peace was born. And here we are, 50 years later.
Okay, let's unpack it further. Rolene, do you want to come in on the conversation at this point?
I just want to say a massive thank you to Bridges for Peace. This is a very, very, very difficult time, not just in the history of Israel, but also the history of the Jewish people. We are a few days away from the first anniversary of the 7th of October, the atrocities that happened. For those of you who can see me, I'm wearing a T-shirt that says, "Machzirim etchem habayta achshav," bring them home now, and of course the yellow ribbon. It is day 356. We still have 101 hostages that remain in captivity by Hamas. These are hostages, not just Jewish Israelis, but also Muslims, Christians, Hindus, Buddhists from over 20 countries around the world who have been held now for almost a year in the most horrific and unbearable conditions. And I think for myself, and I'm sure I speak for many around the country, in thanking Ilse and the incredible work done by Bridges for Peace, who did not hesitate from the moment that first siren went at 6:30 on the 7th of October to provide support for the citizens of Israel, especially those citizens in the south of the country that were the most horrifically affected. Some of you might not know that on the 8th of October, we had over 60,000 internal refugees from the north as well, as a result of Hezbollah starting to fire on communities there. Bridges for Peace has not just provided the practical support for so many communities around this country, they also are providing emotional support. They are emotional first responders, if I can say that, Ilse, and they have been literally the backbone as a shattered nation tries to put the pieces back together. This is a seminal moment, not just in Jewish history, but in Israeli history, the worst day, the worst atrocities committed against us since the Holocaust. And I cannot thank you, Michael, you, Ilse, our Christian brothers and sisters around the world who show up every single day in so many different ways, in so many different countries, giving us the support that we need when we feel so demonized around the world. And Ilse, you have probably one of the most important roles at Bridges for Peace. You are involved in the media.
Oh, indeed.
Oh, yes. We're rubbing our hands in glee. So tell us more about that, Ilse. Elaborate on that, your encounters and what obstacles and what shenanigans you've had to deal with on your road through the world of broadcasting and the media.
Well, I just want to dovetail on what Rolene said. I feel this is not only a seminal moment in Jewish history, this is also a seminal moment in Jewish-Christian relations. I feel that after this, things will not be the same again. We're looking at a history of 2,000 years of hurt and persecution. And maybe this is one of the most important things I have learned while in Israel. Israelis, words, it doesn't mean so much. Actions, they speak so much louder. And I can understand that because so often Israelis hear, "Oh, Israel, we've got your back. We're with you. We're with you." And when the proverbial popo strikes the fan, where are they? And that's why on the 9th of October, Bridges for Peace, we were down in the south already, hours after the war started. And we were there when the rockets were still flying and it was still an absolute war zone. And the reason why we were there was to speak, not in words, but in actions. We were not there during the Holocaust. We were not there during the pogroms. We were not there during the wars of Israel's infancy. But we're here now, and we will not be silent during this time. And my heart, and Bridges for Peace's heart in this time, I think, is education. I'm from South Africa originally, and from the first moment that the sirens started, we started getting calls. What's happening? Days after the 7th of October, My phone was ringing off the hook. Can we still say that? Not with using landlines anymore, but my phone was ringing constantly with people asking questions like, I'm a Christian. I stand with Israel. I'm for Israel. But how do I answer this and this and this accusation coming against Israel? And we're fighting a war not on one front. Israel is in the unique position where it's always fighting a dual front war. One for public opinion, one on the ground. And the war for public opinion is currently being fought on social media, not in the media anymore. And in social media, truth is relative. Truth is whatever you want it to be. I remember a few days ago seeing an accusation on Twitter, so X, my apologies, X, saying the IDF just hung a pregnant woman. And no proof. Absolutely nothing. Thousands of comments, thousands of likes. And now for everyone who saw that comment, who saw that like, that's truth. And that is what we're up against. That and the absolute misinformation that it produces.
Right. You know, Ilse, it's amazing you mentioned that because Rolene and I have had this conversation before. You mentioned education. That in turn will influence ideology, the ideological stumbling block that we are dealing with right now. You've mentioned social media now coming into play and not really presenting that clear picture, the truth, which is what I emphasize when I introduce the show. So hence, that is why we have introduced this program, Tachlis, because I think this is the perfect platform to embrace these issues and to find common ground, which will establish a peaceful, meaningful, and progressive relationship whereby peaceful nations coexist. That is what we want in the long run. It is now until the day after. That is what we've got to consider. Not just now, as I mentioned, where people are saying this, that, and the other, saber rattling and getting at each other's throats. No, this is this is that, and that is that. It's not going to accomplish or achieve anything.
Right.
So hence the reason why Rolene, myself, and colleagues discussed about introducing this program to bring in a more positive, realistic perspective from a human angle.
Indeed. Indeed, that
And I
is
think
so
also,
apologies, go for
we're
it.
not going to all agree on everything. And that's
not,
okay. Yeah. It's okay to not agree on everything. And it's okay to hear different viewpoints. You know, you mentioned so importantly that whenever we are faced with a wartime situation, we fight it on multiple fronts. Mm-hmm. We fight it kinetically at the moment in the north and the south, coming from the Red Sea, coming from the east, Iraq and Syria. We are fighting in the courts of lawfare because we know that one of the weapons employed against us is lawfare with the International Court of Justice and South Africa. And talking about South Africa's role in that is a whole other podcast. But we are also fighting in the court of public opinion, on the battlefield of the media. Now, everybody is so familiar with our incredible Iron Dome air defense systems, which is saving Ilse and my life and millions of lives on a daily basis. And I think our Christian brothers and sisters around the world are building that spiritual Kippat Bazel, that spiritual Iron Dome over this entire country, as Ilse says, that we are here to, as an example to the world, we are here to fulfill the promises made by Hashem, made by God above. But we have, there's one battlefield, no matter how good our soldiers are, no matter how innovative we are, that we just cannot seem to crack, and that is the media battlefield. And throughout these now nearly 12 months, we're definitely seeing, and I think specifically in places like South Africa, a massive change on the media landscape, that voices for to make Israel's argument, or to use a pejorative which many people don't understand, Zionist. I'm putting the Z word out there, the Z word. I was once told by somebody, why do you say Z? I said people in countries with animals like zebras use the word Z. Anywho, what I am noticing from outside is the voice for Israel, the Zionist voice, the Jewish voice in the mainstream media in South Africa is being very, very quickly eroded out of the national conversation there. I'd be interested to hear what you guys are noticing, what you guys are seeing.
I concur. There's a leaning towards one side to the story, and we know exactly what that is. And I'll emphasize it again, Rolene. That is why we've introduced this platform, to bring in a more balanced view, a more realistic view amongst many peoples. You quite rightly pointed out, everybody's got their own opinion. We can agree to disagree. That's going to happen. But as the definition of Tachlis goes, we're looking at things from a realistic and positive perspective, and particularly a progressive line, where we want people to look at things in the long run. We want people to at least acknowledge that, yes, this is the situation now, but we are, whether you like it or not, we are all brothers and sisters in humanity. That's the bottom line. And we have to get along, and we've got to progress together, because at the end of the day, everybody's looking for that common path in life to succeed, live in peace, of course, see your families progress. And in saying that is the overall definition of what everybody wants in life. And of course, beliefs are respected, people's respective stances are respected. Hence the reason, as I say again, why we have introduced Tachlis. And hopefully many people of many diverse backgrounds will come on board and embrace this idea so that we can move together in a positive way.
Are different voices being embraced? This is the issues.
Well,
are
that's the
different
thing.
Voices being embraced? We saw over the last week an event with a colleague, a friend of ours, happen that, in my opinion, was a portent of something very dangerous to come. You know, as Jews, we've been down this rodeo before. We know how it ends. A very, very good friend, a colleague of ours, Howard Feldman, who I think, Ilse, you have spoken to on occasion, a media personality in South Africa. When the mysterious exploding pages and walkie-talkies happened in Lebanon and Syria, when Hezbollah started to spontaneously combust, and we still don't know who's responsible for that because nobody's claimed responsibility. He wrote, like many journalists around the world, in fact, the front page of the Australian was neutered, and the front page of the New York Post was beep, beep, bang, or beep, beep, boom. He spoke about, from a military perspective, just how incredible and well planned this was. And he was fired the very next day by the editor of News 24, Adrian Basson, for celebrating violence. Now, Ilse, you know the landscape here, you know the landscape in South Africa. Michael, you work as a broadcaster, you hear many, many different people's opinions on a daily basis. Let's unpack this, and let's unpack, is this going to have the desired effect? To cancel a different opinion, is it going to have the desired effect with people in South Africa, especially, where you say, okay, well, that was something that his response to the exploding Hezbollah was something that I disagree with, and I'm happy with any dissenting opinion being shut out? Or are people going to say, you know what, wait a minute, this is not the route to take? We need to be in a position to hear everybody's opinions. You know, we don't have to agree, but this is the conversation that needs to be had.
I find this very, very concerning, because if we don't hear every side of the story, everyone is going to believe the one-sided opinion. For instance, AFP, AP, that's being used in South Africa very often by the largest media. And that's a very one-sided opinion very often. For instance, the Lebanon strikes. it's being painted as Israel went against Lebanon without giving the context of 8,000 rockets
Yes.
fired
Yeah.
on Israel first.
Ilse, if I can interject there, it's not just AFP. It's many other prominent news platforms which immediately give such a perspective in their headlines. You know,
Right,
like
so there's the
Israel did this,
context.
Israel did that, without being definitive, or should we say
Exactly.
clear, in exactly what happened and why. There seems to be that immediate approach to the Israel story from that angle. And this is what we want to try and iron out. We need to find common ground here. And we need to, impress upon the people that it's got to be looked from very objective angles. You've got to explore precisely what is going on. You cannot be ingrained. Your mind cannot be ingrained with that specific pattern of thought, which has been trending for so long.
Is to understand that the situation in the Middle East is infinitely more complex than what we like it to be or what we want it to be, and that the solution is more complex than what we like it to be, and very often different from what it would be in a Western perspective. So the context is extremely important, and unfortunately, the context is being left out completely. For instance, Howard Feldman, his article is not celebrating death. Israel is being accused everywhere of excessive force in Gaza. Now, this is exactly the opposite of excessive force, if this was Israel, so by the way. So this is exactly the opposite approach. But again, here Israel is being faulted. So what exactly should Israel do? Sit back and not allow their people to go home, or just what is the alternative here? And that is the context. 60,000 people not in their homes. If you were one of those 60,000 people, would you want your country to do something, or would you want your country just to sit back and say, we're sorry about that?
No.
Let's talk about something, because you hit on something very important there. You hit on something very important. You spoke about the West. And I think what many people don't understand, and maybe this is why we have breakdowns between communities, is that there is a tendency to look at the situation here through Western eyes. Now, you and I live here. We're living through all this balagan, as we say in Hebrew, all this mess. And we live in the Middle East. And the language of the Middle East is very different to the language of the West. Because here, only the strong survive. And they may, our enemies may hate us and want our destruction, but they will respect a show of strength. And this is what we have to educate communities, because I think, and you guys know the situation on the ground with your communities better than I do, is that younger people are very impressionable to sound bites and images, and that informs their opinion and their activity in places like social media, which is why, Ilse, your role at Bridges for Peace is so incredibly important, where relations between Christians and Jews are concerned.
Rolene, can I expand on what you've just said? You've been focusing on that the nature of that specific narrative that stems from where you are in the world. Now, the word apartheid has been used quite recently from the South African leadership's perspective. We know what we're talking about, associating it with Israel. Now, using that word, as you say, the susceptibility of the youth listening to what they listen to on social media. That word now, let's not deny what happened in the past regarding South Africa, and I hope everybody understands the context in which I'm trying to convey this point. And in that, yes, apartheid existed in South Africa. We know the story there, but now to relate that word in the Israeli context, does it fit? Is it working? Is it relevant? But it seems as if it's a catch-on phrase, so to speak, to define the Israeli situation. Question is it the answer to what is happening in Israel? Is that applicable to Israel today?
Oh my goodness. If I always say that if you accuse Israel of being an apartheid state, you either do not know Israel or you do not understand the term apartheid. Arab doctors, Arab lawmakers, Arab generals in the army. It's ridiculous. Let's define apartheid. Let's define, or let's say what defined apartheid in South Africa. The apartness. The fact that some people were given certain things, the others weren't. You were not given rights, you were given rights. You could do this, you cannot do that. In Israel, that's not the case. I was in high school in 1994. I remember. Now, nothing of what I remember from South Africa is here. It's a fully integrated society. You can live wherever you want. You can do whatever you want. You can associate with whoever you want. And I believe that the word apartheid has been, it's become the epitome of evil. And as soon as it's being applied on Israel, Israel becomes evil. Without anyone asking, okay, explain that apartheid to me. My sister's son is in university in South Africa at the moment, and there was an anti-Israel demonstration, Israel apartheid. He walked up to them and he said, oh, please do tell me, how is Israel practicing apartheid? And it was a, so as soon as you try to get behind what it means, we do not unpack the terms. We associate the terms with something evil, and then we label it on something, and immediately there is a word picture. So we need to unpack and we need to ask, what is apartheid and is it applicable here? And it isn't.
It is now we're recording this on the 26th of September. It's almost a year since the 7th of October. And on the 7th of October, Muslims, Bedouins, Druze, Jews, Christians were all living together, and Muslims, Bedouins, Christians, Druze, Jews were invaded together, and Muslims, Bedouins, Christians, Druze, Jews were killed together. And today, as we speak, in the north and in the south, Muslims, Christians, Bedouins, Jews, and Druze are fighting to defend this country. That would not have happened in an apartheid state. And my perspective on this is the reason why we hear these pejoratives, these labels, colonizers, apartheid, racist, now genocide is the latest. We were accused of genocide before there was even a ground invasion in the Gaza Strip. It's this using it's what Natan Sharansky, who's a human rights icon and a good friend of the late Nelson Mandela, said, you can look at anti-Semitism, or in this case Israelophobia, through three lenses: delegitimization, demonization, and double standards. And I think here we've got a very clear case of that, because if you are going to make or turn the state of Israel into the pariah of the world, which is what South Africa was during those apartheid years, you're going to put out these accusations of colonizer, apartheid state, and now genocide state. And 99.999% of the people cannot tell you what the definition is, or give you real-time examples from daily life in Israel. But what they want is, first of all, to deny Israel's legitimacy as the nation state of the Jewish world and have us exiled from the family of nations. And the second reason they do that is because there is a perspective amongst many, especially young people, that the South African solution is a one solution fits all solution. And you can't do that. As Ilse will tell you from living here on the ground, is that we are a completely different example and society and makeup and region to South Africa.
Indeed. Ilse, something I wanted to touch on. Jews and Christians, that is what Bridges for Peace now encompasses. So how is this? How is your movement being received by the Christian community globally? Is it increasing? Are you seeing much more attention coming on board?
Well, ever since October 7th, we have seen record donations coming in, absolutely record. People coming and rallying behind Israel, people praying for Israel. I was in South Africa in April, May, and on a speaking tour, South Africa, Namibia. My husband is Namibian, and the people would come out in droves. We thought that it's going to be too controversial. No one will want to come hear us speak. As soon as they heard we were in town, they would come out in droves, especially from South Africa. Ever since the start of the war, the South African office received record amount donations. And it's an absolute sweet irony that while the South African government takes Israel to the International Court of Justice, the South African Christians are rallying behind the Israelis and saying, we stand with you. We see you not as religious fanatics. We just stand with you because God says we stand with you. No, but because our eyes and our heart has been here already. Maybe that's why we take a closer look and we know that Israel is fighting on the side of light and right. This is not a war against Israel. This is a war on the Western world. And Israel is on the front lines of that war. I want to bring another term.
Here's a curious question. I've got a curious question. People are coming in their droves, not just in South Africa, but Namibia, whose foreign policy is largely determined by South Africa as well. The support base is growing. Why do you think it is that doesn't seem to be filtering up to the decision makers at the top?
I think it's still in a minority. And hopefully, here comes the issue. I think those whose eyes and heart is here, they see. However, like I said, you see on social media genocide, and Israel never plays the victim, ever. It's like you mentioned that in this region, you're strong. And I always tell people that Israelis, their mentality is you either fight or you die. And that strength, unfortunately, carries through in how Israel communicates its message. Very often, I look at someone, I interviewed a former colonel a few weeks ago, and I sat close to him and I saw his eyes fill with tears as he spoke. And then I stepped back maybe 10 meters and he looks aggressive. So it's that you don't take on the role of victim. And unfortunately, our society, they want to go with the underdog. So those who are on the fence, who really don't have a vested interest in this area, they, of course, are going to be swayed by that victim mentality, and Israel refuses to take that role. And that's an issue.
Ilse, so we've spoken about Bridges for Peace, embracing the Jewish and Christian people, but your events and your projects extend further than that in terms of embracing the other cultures, the Arab and Muslim cultures too.
Indeed.
In terms of your interaction with them regarding events. Well, events I've seen on your website, specific social responsibility events, if for want of a better description. Take us through that. So at the same time, what we are doing is establishing the platform for this program in bringing people together. Mm-hmm. Take us through some of those initiatives.
It's actually it's difficult not to be involved in initiatives like that because the community is absolutely so integrated.
Right.
That you can't speak to the one without speaking to the other. For instance, the 24,000 needy Israelis that we feed every month, that includes a sizable Arab percentage that we provide to, that we engage with, that we speak to. So it's not like we're saying, okay, we focus on the Jewish people to the exclusion of the Arabs. No, it's something that we're part of.
I also want to talk about something that you launched this week, a 10-part series, because
yes.
Your role at Bridges for Peace is news, is media. We're speaking about hearing different kinds of voices, different perspectives from different sectors of society to talk Tachlis, to talk Dugri, to talk meat and potatoes, especially in what I think is the most misunderstood region in the world. And you've spoken to people, you've spoken to a whole host of different voices, and it's a very, very interesting project, and I think lines up with what we are trying to achieve here. So talk us through it. I want to hear about how you chose your subjects, like who are the type of people you are interviewing, and why are you interviewing them?
Well, it was born from those first days of war where the phone was just ringing constantly with questions. Ilse, what about this? Ilse, what about this accusation? Ilse, my friend at work says this. Ilse, my colleague says this. So how do I answer this? And in the beginning, in the first few days of the war, we did interviews, live interviews on Facebook, and it seemed very popular. So in the end, we decided if this is going to be something that we are going to put together, because the information is out there, make no mistake. However, you have a busy life, you need to, this isn't your full-time job. So we decided to put all that information together, to collate it. So yes, Rolene, the series that we launched, it's called Israel Unfiltered, and it's being made available for free until the 10th of October. It's a 10-part interview series, and it was born from the questions that we got repeatedly. Asking, Ilse, how do I answer people who accuse Israel of being a genocide state? How do I answer people who accuse Israel of being an apartheid state? And from there, we decided, let's develop a one-stop shop where you can have all the questions that you have answered by experts. What is the history of this region? What is the difference between Western mindset and a Middle Eastern mindset? How do we think differently than people in this region might think? So we gathered a number of experts. We spoke to a first responder that was on duty on October 7th. We spoke to a father of 3 who was called up on that morning and who had to fight his way down south. We spoke to a military expert that is used to be a British colonel, commander of the British forces in Afghanistan. We spoke to 2 Arab Israelis who share their heart about the fact that they get to live in the best country for them in the Middle East. And here is this collection of information that is just waiting for people to explore. And I really, really hope that that information gets out there, not because Bridges for Peace produced it, but because of the people who sat down and spent their time and their heart speaking about the country that they love, the country that they live in, the country that they want to protect, and the people that they love and that they want to protect. And that doesn't only include Jewish Israelis. It includes the people of Gaza. It includes the Arab Israelis. It includes everyone here. I remember one of the Israeli soldier telling me, people scream free Palestine. We are fighting to free the people in Gaza from Hamas. So if you look at it, I'm fighting to free the Palestinians. So yes, you're more than welcome to look into the series, and maybe we can put the link online here.
Ilse, if I may, we spoke earlier on about, the susceptibility of the youth concerning social media, the influence that, is imposed upon them. Has Bridges for Peace ever engaged with students? I mean, we hear these students who are chanting along,
Yes.
these chants like from the river to the sea. And what's frightening is that when one closely investigates, you'll find out that the majority of these students have no clue as to where they are chanting about and what they are chanting for.
Which river, which sea, indeed. We have a young people discipleship program that we invite 5 young people, 5 girls, 5 young men, 5 young women from around the world to come to Israel, to live here for a year, to serve in the organization, to learn from experts, Christian, Jewish experts, Arab experts here in the land, to travel the land, to get to know the culture here. And then we send them out back home, and that's where they serve as ambassadors for Israel.
Rolene, it's been a fantastic chat with Ilse. I think we've laid the foundation clearly for what we want to achieve from this program, Tachlis, to be clear to the point and, get to the bottom of reality issues and to talk to everyone. And, of course, I'll emphasize it again, today until the day after. That is what we are looking into. We're not here to rattle sabers at each other and shout each other down and compare notes and who's academically more, like a superior to the other. We want now to find common ground and progress forward as brothers and sisters in humanity. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that in conclusion for our first edition of Tachlis.
Well, I just want to say a massive thank you to Ilse Strauss and her incredible organization, Bridges for Peace, and to you, Michael, and to South African Friends of Israel, and of course, our team behind the scenes, twiddling the knobs, making sure that everything happens and this podcast gets off the ground. Because I think that right now these conversations are more important than ever before. The day after, for many of us here in Israel, especially the Jewish people, is very, very worrying when we look around and we see the tsunami of hatred and the rise of anti-Semitism around the world, which is why we appreciate our allies, our friends, so very, very much. And thank you for using your platforms, using your voices, using your organizations in Israel, in South Africa, and around the world to stand up for us. I also just want to conclude by reminding everybody again that we still have 101 hostages being held captive in the terror dungeons of Hamas, hostages from over 20 countries, hostages who are Muslim, who are Jewish, who are Christian, who are Buddhist, and who are Hindu, or who are atheist. Next week we approach Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. I want to say thank you to all of you for blessing us. May this year be a peaceful year. May this year they all come home. And soon it will be that first anniversary of the 7th of October. We are still profoundly traumatized here in Israel. We have not moved from the 7th of October 2023, which is what makes this podcast and all of you out there listening and all of you out there supporting more invaluable to us than words can express. And I just want to thank you all from the beautiful city of Modi'in, the city of Hanukkah, that many of you might be familiar with, halfway between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, where our lovely Ilse is. Thank you and shalom.
Rolene, we certainly share your sentiments there. And Ilse, thank you so much for joining us on this inaugural Tachlis program. Rolene, I just want to confirm we will be publishing our editions every fortnight. So just to let our listeners know, and of course we will update as to who we'll have on our next program. But thank you so much for listening and for watching. Rolene, thanks so much. Rolene from Rolene. Ilse, all the best in all your endeavors with Bridges for Peace. That concludes our inaugural Tachlis publication. Till we meet again, take care, stay blessed and stay safe. Goodbye.